MennoNerds, this is Deborah, and today I'd like to talk about 4 unlikely women who have shaped my faith. They all have something in common. Let's see if you can figure out what it is. I'd like to pick up where Will and Robert left off. They were talking about stories that inspire and shape the next generation. Of course, I believe that the most important stories are from the Bible themselves, but throughout history and even today, men and women of the faith have continued to shape us, and I think it's important to recognize that. The first person I want to talk about is my own Oma, my grandma, Anna Ferber. She was such an incredible woman of faith to me. She went through such difficult times in her life, having to leave her old country, having to learn a new language, having to raise children during the war period. I don't think that would have been easy, but that never impacted who she was, and she never let that impact her faith, and she continued to be an inspiration to me right up until her death when I was 17 years old. Another person that really impacted me is Hannah Hurnard, who is an author, and she wrote a brilliant book called Hinds Feet on High Places, as well as several other books. She was called by God to be a missionary in Israel, but unfortunately she suffered through many hardships, and she had a lot of health issues, and her doctors told her there's no way you can be a missionary. But Hannah persevered, and she said, no, it's what God's calling me to do. And because of that, she's been able to reach so many people through both her books and through the ministry itself. The third person I want to talk about is Helen Roseveare, who I've talked about in another vlog as well. I'm really inspired by Helen because she went as a female missionary in the Congo as to be a doctor, way back in the day when women basically were not doctors. And she experienced some of the most horrendous and horrific things that you could ever imagine a woman to go through. But through it all, she clung to God, and she's not afraid to share her testimony. She always said, the question is not, is it worth it what I went through, but is he worthy? And God asked her the question, will you trust me, even if I never ask you why? And she said, yes, I will trust you, even if I don't know the answer to what I'm going through. And lastly, the fourth woman is one that I've never met, but I talked to her on the phone one day because I used to call people for Tyndale. And she talked about how her daughter is a missionary in one of these African countries. And one day, it was 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and God told her, hey, you need to pray for your daughter. And she was like, why? I mean, I just had my devotions 3 hours ago, and yeah, of course, I always pray for my daughter. God's like, no, get down on your hands and knees, pray right now. She was cutting onions at the time. She was making her lunch, but she got down on her hands and knees and prayed. The next day, her daughter called her up and she said, Mom, thank you for praying for me at 12 o'clock last night. Her mom's like, how did you know I prayed for you? And the daughter said, well, I was in the field by myself, and a cobra came along, started to flare. There was no one there to help me, and I looked at my watch because the cobra started slithering away, and it was 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And I thought to myself, wow, what an incredible testimony that because you listened to God, your daughter's life was spared. That's so cool. And my encouragement to you today is to be able to share your own testimonies. I know it's hard to be vulnerable, especially in a world that promotes being strong. And I think for us in the church should be the #1 place where we are capable of just expressing ourselves in any way, that we should be open to talk about things like depression, trials, addictions, tribulations, family issues. And yet even there we're shy. But you never know who your testimony can reach. There might be someone in your group who's really struggling, who needs to hear about how you got through something with God's help. So become today a person that inspires other men and women in the faith who are younger than you, and let's continue this conversation.